Like I mentioned earlier, my name is Jordan. I'm the executive pastor here at Soul, and I just have a brief announcement for you. As you well know, we are partnered with the Ukrainian Assemblies of God in Eastern Europe. This is a group of churches that exist in, Ukraine, clearly, and we've been partnered with them for years, long before the conflict that broke out between Russia and Ukraine. And since the war, we brought up some fundraising efforts on behalf of the Soul community, and we're partnered with by a variety of organizations and churches from across Canada to be able to raise over $270,000 for Ukraine. Now, when you think about that in the context of our church, we're a church that has roughly a budget of $1 million a year. So over a quarter of our budget, we raised to give away in a very short period of time to our partners in Ukraine. Of course, that creates all sorts of logistical challenges for us in getting money there, et cetera, et cetera. My brief announcement for you is just to let you know that working with the leadership of Soul, Pastor Jerry, the leadership being our steering committee, Pastor Jerry has gone to Ukraine for about a week. And so he is in Czechia right now, Czech Republic. And so he has gone on the invitation of Pastor Sergey, who leads the, camera, that's fun. Hey, bro. He's gone on the invitation of Pastor Sergey, who leads the Ukrainian Assemblies of God churches. And I'll read you Pastor Sergey's invitation letter in just a second. But obviously, since the sensitivities of traveling to Eastern Europe at this point, we kept it on the down low until he was actually there. Pastor Jerry's trip and the mission of his trip is fourfold, and I want to break it down for you. He's there for just over a week. He has brought over funds raised on behalf of the Soul community for the Ukrainian assemblies that have yet to be dispersed. As you can imagine, wiring money into Eastern Europe right now is quite an adventure and hit with all sorts of fees. And one of the ways that we can get money there is by actually bringing it over. It's effective and preferable for our missions partners on the ground. He'll be speaking at a church in Czechia this Sunday, so probably around now or a couple hours ago. That is a Ukrainian Assemblies of God church specifically for refugees. So he is speaking there. It was planted shortly after the outbreak of the war. From there, he's going to actually head into Western Ukraine, and he has been invited by the university that our academic team went to right before the war broke out in September. And our team went there. They lectured in the university around a series of subjects, and he's been invited in to actually preach to the students and to the faculty there. And so he will do that, which opens up incredible doors for our missions partners on the ground. And then finally, he will preach in the lead Ukrainian Assemblies of God church in Western Ukraine. And a part of that will be a leader and pastors conference. If you followed along on Instagram, or if you followed any of our Ukrainian partners on Instagram, you would know that as the Ukrainian armed forces continue to liberate settlements in the eastern half of the nation, humanitarian aid then rushes into these cities that have seen all sorts of atrocities over the last number of months. And the Ukrainian Assemblies of God are always one of the first ones there, driving vehicles that this church provided for them to distribute humanitarian aid on the ground. And so Pastor Jerry, though, will be in the western half of the country, which has not seen any Russian troops on the ground and has not experienced any sort of bombing since the early part of the war. So that said, here's a letter from Pastor Sergey to Pastor Jerry and to the Soul community, and I want to just read it for you. Pastor Jerry and Soul Sanctuary, I would like to thank you for the help that you've provided the Ukrainian people during this war, namely the purchasing of groceries, the purchasing of transport, also in the organization of camps for orphan children and for internationally displaced persons. This is a huge support to us. In this letter, we want to invite you to Lutsk, Ukraine, and to inform you that our city is located 100 kilometers from the Polish border. It's safe here. We'd like you to come over and to serve on Thanksgiving Day, the 9th of October, and we'd like to have a leadership conference with you. The university where you've served before invites you over to preach and to encourage the students and faculty who study there during the wartime. Also, I would like to invite you to preach on the 2nd of October in our church in Brno, Czech Republic. With God's help, we've managed to open the church during the war. The church is only 4 months old, and nearly 50 people visit each Sunday. We'll be glad to have you. With best regards, Pastor Sergey Semeniuk. And so here's my ask for you, Soul Sanctuary community, that you would continue to keep Pastor Jerry and our Ukrainian missions partners in your prayers. Pray for their missions efforts that they put forward. Pray for Pastor Jerry as he ministers. Pray for Pastor Sergey and his family as they minister. And then also pray for a resolution to this war. We will have more information on Pastor Jerry and what he's doing out there on our social media this week, so you can stay tuned to see exactly what he's up to. That said, moving into the month of October, if you have been at Soul for a while, you would understand that the way that we normally preach is that we take a book of the Bible and we walk through it, which means we preach every chapter and every verse. We can't really skip anything. And so if it's in the Bible, then we have to teach it. That's the way that we normally preach. This fall's a little bit different. Over the course of the last 3 weeks, we talked about who we are, kind of the genetic makeup of the Soul community. And then we talked about life groups and the importance of that. And then last week we talked about how we make a difference in our world through service. And so this week and for the month of October, we're going in a little bit of a different direction. And that direction is that we're going to hear a number of stories that, from people in the Soul community and from people outside of the Soul community. Stories of God's faithfulness, stories of God's goodness and of God's presence in the midst of difficult times. If you remember, just in our call to prayer, we read from Philippians chapter 4, which will be the key text for this morning's story. And so, for those of you who are asking, we got like halfway through the book of Mark, not even, and then we're like, where did the book of Mark go? Don't worry, we dog-eared the page. We're going to circle back to the book of Mark. We're going to get there probably in the new year. But over the next 4 weeks, that's what we're doing. And right in the middle of that, on October 16th, is Joanne Goodwin's story, which is a story that I think you absolutely need to be here to hear. So be here on October 16th for sure. We're going to have some fun this month. It's going to be a good time. But for this morning's life lesson, I invite up my mom, Sharon Michalski. Would you come up? It's great. I work with my father, if you didn't know. And he and I have very good, healthy work personal boundaries, pretty necessary. Yeah. And so at the office he's Pastor Jerry, and at home he's Dad, or at my home he's Dad. So it's necessary in order to work with family. But we don't work together, so you're just Mom.
Pastor Mom.
Pastor Mom, I like it. Cool, yeah, cool. Great. So Mom. Okay. Yeah. Anyways, I love you and rock and roll.
Thank you. Well, it's so funny that I'm doing this because this week, as I was planning this today, so during the day I'm a teacher, but at nighttime I'm a therapist. And so I went to what I call her my supervisor, and I check in with her periodically because she's like, I need to check in on your mental health to make sure you're okay. So it's interesting because Thursday night I went to see her, and she said, Sharon, is there something maybe on your mind? And I said, well, Jerry's leaving tomorrow morning, and I realized today that I've never, ever spent a night on my own in my house. So if you think about it, I was raised, with parents, full house, and then I went right from my parents' house right to marrying Jerry, traveled with him a lot, but always had 4 kids. And Jesse, as many of you know, got married this summer, so I have empty house, syndrome? I don't know what it's called. Anyway, I really felt it, and so it was funny because I'm so thankful to the Lord that I got my 4 boys. So I basically said, everybody keep your phone on at nighttime, just in case Mom has a little, panic attack. But the fact is, I really appreciate every one of you that actually gave me your phone number also and said, call us if you need us, we'll be there. So it's so ironic that I'm talking about this morning because I realized as I wrote this that I actually come from a very strong line of women. And I'm going to share this with you this morning, so I know I can do this. As Jordan said, we're beginning a new mini-series here at Soul called Unexpected Encounters with Jesus. After spending some time thinking about what I should share with you this morning, I kept on coming back to the scriptures found in the book of Philippians that Jordan had read earlier, as it encourages us to be anxious for nothing. I want to begin this morning by reading that passage again that Jordan had read in Philippians 4, 6-7. I think that's me, right? Sorry. Be anxious for nothing, but in everything by prayer and supplication, with thanksgiving, let your requests be made known to God. And the peace of God, which surpasses all understanding, will guard your hearts and minds through Christ Jesus. Have you ever had those nights when you can't sleep? You're feeling totally restless. You know those nights when you know you have to get up in the morning, and you find as time goes on, you become more and more anxious about the fact that you need to be asleep so that you can get up and you can function the next day. Everyone else in the house seems to be resting peacefully, but your mind is racing. Possibly you feel overwhelmed with projects that need to get finished. Maybe you're thinking about the stress that's related to your job or your school. Maybe you find yourself in a family situation that you have no control over. Maybe it's your finances and they're stressing you out. Possibly you find yourself in a place where you feel guilt or shame about an addiction that nobody else knows about. Or maybe you're feeling insecure about a decision that you need to make. I find myself in conversations with people of all ages who are experiencing many types of anxiety and stress. To add to the things that I just mentioned, we've all gone through a pandemic, which has added more layers and more complexities to life. As people have lost loved ones, become intolerant of others who don't believe as they do, and some have gone or are even going through a period of listening to culture instead of what the Word of God says. There's so many reasons for anxiety and for stress today, but I want to tell you that if you're experiencing it, you're not alone. Even though we have all types of medications and counseling, which I have to say, it works for most people. This morning, I want to take you to the Word of God and ask you to go with me to find rest through the Scriptures. I want to share with you 3 points today and some experiences that are related to them. And I pray that they will encourage you in whatever journey you're on, because I don't believe for 1 minute that you're here by accident. The first thing I want you to consider in the middle of your anxiety or your stress is to celebrate God and His goodness. In the book of Philippians, the Apostle Paul, he wrote a letter to the church of Philippi. He told them not to be anxious for anything, but to rejoice in the Lord always. Again, I say rejoice. He wanted to share with the church the wisdom and the encouragement of living out their faith in Christ by standing strong and steadfast when struggles or persecution occurred in their lives. He reminded them to do this whether they wanted to or not, whether they were happy or they felt the Lord had disappointed them. It is good for us to remember that when it came to suffering, Paul was actually the expert. He went through severe persecution for his beliefs in the Lord and his call to ministry. So advice for him on how to rejoice, it seems applicable for even us today. He reminds us that when we go through challenges, we can do more because Christ is in us. I appreciate how Paul went on to say, finally, brothers, whatever is true, whatever is honorable, whatever is right, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is admirable, if anything is excellent or praiseworthy, think on these things. These scriptures reminded me of a situation that took place a couple of days before my mom went to be with Jesus. It was an unexpected encounter I felt she had with the Lord. I don't know of many things that people are more anxious about than dying. I've sat with a couple people that have died in my presence, and I don't know what to say. Each experience is different. But when I was with my mom in her final hours, she said something to me that shaped a big part of my life today. You see, my mom was in hospice because she had pancreatic cancer. She knew she was going home to be with Jesus unless a miracle happened soon. And I remember a specific day that she seemed lost in her thoughts as she looked out her hospital window. I asked her what she was thinking. And that's when she looked at me and she said, Sharon, I want you to know that I have no regrets in life. As a matter of fact, if I had to do my life again, I would live it the same. My kids love the Lord, and I feel like I've done my job. I live my life with total faith that the Lord can heal me in an instant. But, and then she looked at me like this, and she said, but if he doesn't, I don't ever want you to be angry with him. My faith is so strong, and I know the Lord can do anything. But if I go to be with him, I want you to remain steadfast in knowing that he is all-powerful, and he has my life in his hands. Don't ever let resentment or bitterness towards the Lord come into your life if I die. You know, I'd always known my mom knew the scriptures, but that day I experienced how she lived the scriptures. You see, my mom eventually passed on, but she will always be an example to me of the scripture that says, even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for you are with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. How powerful some of my mom's last words were for me. Especially as a young mom, I wondered if I could pass on her strong faith in the Lord to my own kids. Her excellent example of a life full of thanksgiving and celebration of the goodness of God, even in her last days. She definitely paved a way for me to focus in on whatever is lovely, whatever is admirable. If anything is excellent or praiseworthy, think on these things. The second thing I want to share with you today is to continually let your requests be known to the Lord. I think a lot of us feel better when we talk to others about our problems. I know I do, especially those that are closest to us. You know, sometimes we forget that it's our Heavenly Father who knows our hearts and our minds the best. He understands us better than we understand ourselves. The Lord has big shoulders for us to lean on. And when we bring our requests to Him, He is there, even in those times when we don't feel His presence. You see, it's our faith in Him that sustains us. When things don't go the way we plan, I believe that as Christ followers, this is the time we need to trust our Heavenly Father the most. That He is in control, especially when we feel we are not. After all, He says, you keep him in perfect peace whose mind is stayed on you because he trusts in you. I think about my grandma and an experience my mom shared with me that took place during World War II. You see, it was during this time that my maternal grandmother believed the Lord had wanted her to come to Canada with her children, while my grandpa had no choice but to stay and to fight. The family, Grandma with her 6 kids, boarded a train to leave Germany in order to get on a ship to travel across the Atlantic and finally to arrive in Canada. While fleeing the country, my mom's little brother was only somewhere between a couple weeks to a couple months old. My mom mentioned that she remembered him continuously crying on that train, to the point where the people on the train were very irritated with him. And I can't imagine what it would be like to hear a baby cry for days on end. My mom said that she remembered her siblings and her in constant state of feeling hungry all the time and repeatedly asking their mom for food. Since there was a limited amount, my grandmother gave all the food that she received, the bread on the train, to her children, and sometimes didn't eat anything for days. The problem was that my mom's little baby brother's only means of food was grandma, as he didn't take formula or any solids yet. The day came where grandma's milk dried up, and her baby died in her arms on that train. My mom said she remembered the moment when the crying stopped and her little brother took his last breath. The conductor stopped the train, and my grandmother dressed her little baby boy in a beautiful white dress. And while others watched, she placed him in a shoebox, which had been provided by the conductor, and buried him beside the train tracks. As the train began to move on and the trip continued, my mom remembered my grandma looking back at the site where she had buried her baby. My mom said that on that day she saw the strength of her mom as she wept, then pulled herself together and talked to her kids about how she would pray about everything. No matter what would happen, she would trust in God and would leave her cares at the foot of the cross with Jesus. My mom said that this was one of her first demonstrations of how, when life was stressful, the Lord's strength could be found. It was His strength that followed this family as they got on a ship and they crossed the Atlantic without my grandfather. Years ago, while Jerry and I were pastoring at Calvary Temple, I remember a choir member coming up to me one Sunday, asking if my grandma had ever told me what happened to her when she got off the ship with her children in Canada. At that point, I said, no, I really don't know what you mean. And he proceeded to tell me that he was on that same ship as my grandma and my mom. And when they got off, he and other travelers watched as my grandmother fell to her knees with her face on the ground, while her remaining 5 children stood behind her, bewildered. When people came around her to ensure that she was okay, she asked them not to touch her. As she said, she saw an angel in front of her. This angel, I would find, gave her a promise about her children, her grandchildren, and her great-grandchildren. You see, in that moment, my grandma had an unexpected encounter with an angel. And in that moment, she demonstrated to her family and to people around her an example of hearing the voice of God. An example of laying her requests before the Lord. But most importantly, a model of trusting God in her life, even when things were happening that she did not pray for, that she did not understand, and she couldn't make sense of. Maybe today you're here. Maybe you thought you'd be further ahead in life, in your job, with your finances. Maybe you're here and you're discouraged about the decisions that some of your kids are making. Maybe your marriage is going through a rough time. Maybe you're here today and you're wondering what the Lord has in store for your life because you want it to count. Maybe you're having to make some very important decisions in the next couple of days. Or maybe you're sitting here today and you don't feel seen, heard, or respected by other people. Perhaps you're anxious about things that are rooted from previous experiences. Maybe someone once threatened you or traumatized you. Maybe you have anxieties that exist because you have a strong ability to imagine the worst, like getting on a plane. Sometimes these things can overpower us to the point where we can't live out our life to our fullest potential. I want to encourage you today. Let your requests be known to God. I once heard someone say, instead of despair, go to prayer. And go to promise-filled prayers. I encourage you today to leave whatever you're dealing with at the foot of Jesus, at the foot of the cross. And maybe you will have an unexpected encounter with Jesus or an angel, just like my grandma, in the midst of whatever you're going through. After all, Jesus died on the cross so that we could have eternal life. He also paid the price so that we could cast all our cares on Him and leave them there. Yep, I said leave them there. Think about what you do when you need to get something fixed around the house. Don't you take it to the repair shop? I know I do. And I leave it there. Don't you trust the people that are the experts? Or do you always call them and question what they're doing? Are you fixing my car the right way? Are you fixing my vacuum cleaner the right way? In the same way, the Lord knows us better than we know ourselves. He doesn't want us to carry our anxieties or our problems on our own. He never asked us to do this. In the Bible, he clearly says, casting all your anxieties on him, for he cares for you. Remember, when we leave our concerns with the Lord, he doesn't always answer the way we expect. But if we have faith, we know that no matter what, he hears our prayers and he will walk with us no matter what we're going through. And finally today, I just want to encourage you to live your life in a spirit of hope. I remember when our boys were really young, we took them on a trip to Minneapolis. And we were those parents that traveled with all our kids by van because it was cheap. And our hope was that their experience would be a lasting one in their minds. And well, one trip will forever be lasting in our minds. We took the boys down to the Mall of America. And Jerry, being the playful dad that he still is, was playing around with the boys in the middle of the mall. Yep, we were those annoying parents that take up the entire walkway with all their kids, and we were never quiet. And while we were having fun and fooling around, Jerry looked at me, and he asked me to feel James's right wrist. James is our third oldest out of the 4 kids. As I did, we both had the same thought. There was a definite cyst in his wrist, and we knew that something was not right. We packed up our van immediately and hurried back to Winnipeg, and we took James to Health Science Center. As we did, I remember holding him so tightly in the back seat, thinking that our lives would change from that moment on. I recall 2 scriptures that I believe the Lord wanted me to hang on during this time. And if you're a parent here today, I want you to know that the scriptures that I took comfort in were scriptures that I learned in Sunday school when my parents took me to church. I didn't seek them out in the time that I was going through a rough time. I knew them because they were in my mind and in my heart. Philippians 4:13, I can do all things through him who strengthens me. And in Psalm 46, 1-2, God is our refuge and strength, an ever-present help in trouble. Therefore we will not fear, though the earth give way and the mountains fall into the heart of the sea. Though its waters roar and foam, and the mountains quake with their surging. I took from those verses that no matter what I would be facing in the next days, the Lord would be with us. He would be our refuge and he would be our strength. Once we arrived at the hospital, the doctor took an x-ray of James's arm and called us into a room, telling us that this is something that they were not familiar with. They ruled out cancer, but they felt the need to send James for more tests. Within that week, we were with a local doctor who told us there's nothing that we can do for James. As a matter of fact, he went so far as to let us know that James will lose full use and mobility of his right arm by the time he would be a teenager. I remember leaving the hospital that day with the full intent to make another appointment the following week once I gathered my thoughts on these results. Well, that next meeting came. And after he met me, Mama Bear, remember I said we have pretty strong women in my family. This doctor told us it would cost a lot of money and Manitoba Health would not cover the operation, but he was willing to send us to Gillette Children's Hospital in St. Paul, Minnesota, to get a second opinion. I remember thinking to myself, for nothing is impossible with God. Upon our arrival in St. Paul, the doctor from Gillette Children's Hospital told us that he thought he could help. Even though he had only done this operation once before, he identified that James had an osteochondroma, which is a tumor that grows at the end of a bone. Because the tumor was on the smaller bone in his arm, the bigger bone wasn't growing straight and would eventually dislocate. He believed that if anyone could help James, it would be him. And therefore, we went through the operation hopeful. For 1 full year after the initial operation, Jerry went down to Minnesota bi-weekly to have James looked after by this doctor from the Gillette Children's Hospital. Throughout the process, the doctor reminded us that it would be a miracle if James would have full mobility in his arm. But we didn't stop having hope. And we decided not to be fearful. We continually prayed that after having the fixator put in place, the bone would straighten out in time. Like most parents, there was no limit to what we would have done for our son. And we intentionally lived in a constant state of hope. Sometimes it was so difficult to watch the pain that James felt as Jerry turned the key in the fixator each morning and evening, with hopes that with each turn, the bone would elongate. There was nothing we wouldn't have done for our son. We believed that the Lord would give us, and especially James, the strength to face what was ahead and to give us a peace throughout this long process. It is by a miracle that I can say that the Lord healed James's arm. And it was the process that I often think about. That during that year, we lived in a constant state of stress, but always remained hopeful. I recall our family and our church praying for us and taking comfort in the scriptures. Scriptures like, "Therefore I tell you, do not worry about your life, what you will eat or drink, or about your body, what you will wear. Is life not more than food and the body more than clothes? Look at the birds of the air. They do not sow or reap or store away in barns, and yet your heavenly Father feeds them. Are you not much more valuable than they? Can any one of you, by worrying, add a single hour to your life?" So this morning, I don't know what you're going through. I'm not really sure what part of what I said today might resonate with you, but I want to pray for you. If you're here, you're experiencing anxiousness, worry, maybe you have people conflict, you have problems at home or at work. If you're in need of a miracle in your body today, would you let me pray for you? Maybe you're here and you're just tired. You're just tired. As every head is bowed in this room, if this is you today, I'm going to ask you to just lift your hand where you are and let me pray for you. I see a lot of hands going up this morning. I want you to know that many years ago, my church and community prayed for our family when we felt so empty and depleted by our situation with James. And so in turn, I want you to know that you have a community and pastors here that want to lift you up. And so today, would you allow me to pray for you? Because he sees every hand that's raised in this room. Lord, I thank you for loving us and caring for our needs as you do. For you know the plan ahead for us, and you know how to guide our steps to be in line with that plan. It's not always easy to rejoice and remain hopeful in you when problems and circumstances arise. But help each of us to remember the times you've carried us before and how you blessed us more than we thought possible. Thank you for knowing our needs before we ask them, for carrying our heartaches as we have them, and for encouraging us through your word that you are so much bigger and greater than we can imagine. So help us rejoice and be glad as we lay before you what is on our hearts and minds this morning. As we pray, let us remember that you will carry us through. And we give all to you in Jesus' name. Amen. This morning, I've asked the worship team to sing one of my favorite songs. It moves me every time I hear it. And I'm going to share this with you. It's not in my notes, but in the morning when my feet hit the floor, I sing this song because it sets me up for the day, no matter what I encounter that day. I am thinking and I am dwelling on the goodness of God. And so this morning, if you're in that place, I want you to think about how good He is to you, despite what you're going through. I want you to take a minute and think about all the things that He has carried you through in your lifetime. Because sometimes we think about the things that are present, but we don't realize that He has carried us through so many things in the past. And as they sing this today, I'm just going to ask you to stand, sing along. God is good. Even when we don't understand, He is good, and He never wants us to travel this life alone. He wants to walk with us and carry us in the times that we can't stand. Give Him that chance today. Would you stand with us, please?
I love you, Lord. Oh, your mercy never fails me. And all my days I've been held in your hand. From the moment that I wake up until I lay my head, oh, I will sing of the goodness of God. All my life you have been faithful. All my life you have been so, so good. With every breath that I am able, oh, I will sing of the goodness of God. I love your voice. You have led me through the fire in darkest night. You were close like no other. I've known you as a father. I've known you as a friend. And I have lived in the goodness of God. Oh, 'cause all my life you have been faithful. 'Cause all my life you have been so, so good. With every breath that I am able, oh, I will sing of the goodness of God. Your goodness, sing it together. Your goodness is running after, it's running after me. Your goodness is running after, it's running after me. With my life laid down, I surrender now. I give you everything. Your goodness is running after, it's running after. Goodness, sing it again. Your goodness is running after, it's running after me. Your goodness is running after, it's running after me. My life laid down, I surrender
want you to leave this place encouraged this morning. I said it earlier, and this morning when I got up, the Lord said, the people that are there today, they need to be there because I brought them there so that they know that there is a peace that passes all understanding. So I encourage you in the midst of whatever you're going through, get up in the morning, sing goodness of God. And when you come into different things in your life, that will be in your mind. And you'll have a supernatural strength that will get you through the day. Church, Soul Sanctuary, what I'm going to share with you, Pastor Jerry had on his phone for over a year as we went through this with James. And every morning we would read it out loud. So in ancient time, the one who blessed extended their hands for blessing, and those receiving the blessing did likewise. This is what carried us through, and it still does at times. Soul Sanctuary, be anxious in nothing. Prayer in everything. Thankful in anything. And have peace. And now, let's go out and let's live the church. And let's let other people see Jesus in us, and let's change this city and this world for the glory of God. Amen.